Everyone. Hi, everyone. It's Jeannie Breedy. I'm one of the marketing directors here with Winsor. I'm glad to introduce a new artist to you, Mandy Peltier, who's with us painting, actually drawing with studio watercolor pencils. The project is eucalyptus leaves, and we just want everybody to enjoy it, take it all in. I'm going to give you some information on the chat, and I'm going to let Mandy take it away and get to the project. So enjoy, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, and hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here today, and I've been looking forward to this class for a long time. So it's here finally. I can't wait to talk to you guys about what we're going to do today. But first, I'll just introduce myself really briefly. Like Jeannie said, I'm Mandy Peltier, and I am an artist and instructor. I like to use a lot of different media, but my primary or go-to is colored pencil. And the work that's behind me is, there's some of my colored pencil pieces. And I tend to be more of a photorealistic artist. But when it comes to watercolor, I really like the loose, flowy kind of technique where it's still representational, but not necessarily ultra photorealistic. And so today, I am going to teach you how to use colored pencils, just a type of colored pencil called watercolor pencils. And according to the Colored Pencil Society of America and their definition of what constitutes a colored pencil, watercolor pencils are a type of colored pencil. The main difference is that they're water soluble. And so this class, I'm going to show you how to use the pencils dry. We'll actually be using them dry for the majority of the class. And then at the very end, we'll use a wet brush to activate the watercolor pigment or the dry pigment and turn it into watercolor paint. So before we begin, I just want to share a couple of things. We only have an hour together, which with colored pencil is not a lot of time if you've ever used colored pencil. So I've made a couple of adjustments to this class just to help us get through everything within the 1 hour time frame. And the first thing I want to point out is this is the project, the eucalyptus stems. And this is actually a written project as well. And it will be available to download on the Michaels website soon. And while the written project has 2 stems on it, in the class today, we're just going to focus on the larger of the 2 stems just to try and get through my whole technique and process within this hour. The other thing I want to point out just super quick is, I've taught a lot of workshops and I've sat in on a few, and I have found personally and just from experience that you typically don't do your best work in a workshop, and it's nothing against you as an artist or against the workshop, but there's sort of some things working against you in a workshop setting. The instructor is talking your ear off the whole time, and they're not necessarily going at your pace. So you might feel a little behind, or you might feel even like it's not going fast enough. And you may even be comparing your work to those around you or to that of your instructors. So really my goal for you in this class is just to use this hour to really learn my technique and the why of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, not necessarily to try and keep up with me, because to get through this in the hour, I will be moving at a slightly brisk pace. And I just want you to understand why. It's really because I don't want to end this class just halfway done. I want you to understand the whole technique. So when the written project is available to download, and when this video is available to view again, you can always rewatch it and pause it as needed to try and keep up. So can I get thumbs up so I understand that and you guys are all good and on the same page? All right, well then I am going to share my other camera now. So hang on just a second here. All right, and because you don't have the supply list per se, well, you may have gotten it when you signed up for the Michaels class, the Zoom class today. I'm still gonna go over the supplies just really quick so you know what you need. The first thing is a little saucer or cup of water, and you do not need very much water at all for watercolor pencils, and I'll explain why a little bit later, or at least for this technique that's more of that flowy, loose kind of look. And you will need a number 2 or just graphite pencil. You can use any graphite pencil. I'm just using a number 2 today that has an eraser on the end. I like the convenience of that. And then I'm using 2 round watercolor brushes. These are Cotman brushes, and I have a 0 and a 4. If you're wondering if you can use a different brush, the answer to that question is yes. If you don't have a 0 and if you don't have a 4, just use what you have. If you don't have a round brush, but you have a filbert or a square, try those. You just may need to take some more care as you apply the wet brush to the edges and to the shapes of the leaves, but use what you have. I'm using a 0 and a 4 round brush. And then the Winsor & Newton watercolor pencil set, I believe, has 24 pencils, and this particular project uses only 7 of them. It uses the ice gray color, yellow, grass, lush green, umber, midnight blue, and black. And I have these colors kind of listed here on this color chart that I'll talk about in a minute in case you think I moved too fast there. Another thing this project uses is masking fluid and a toothpick to apply it. And I'll explain what this is and where we're going to use it in just a little bit. The paper this project uses is Winsor & Newton cold press watercolor paper. Now I am using the 9x12 size, and when the written instructions are available for you to download and follow along, the instructions ask you to take a 9x12 sheet of watercolor paper and cut it in half. So you have 2 6x9 pieces of paper. And one of those 6x9 pieces of paper will be used for the color chart or even value study. And the other 6x9 sheet of paper will be used for the actual product itself. Now, since we are sort of having a class here, I actually want to start by doing a couple exercises to explain pencil strokes and pencil pressure. So I will be using just a scrap sheet of paper for the exercises, just so that you're aware. All right, so are we good on supplies? If so, I will go ahead and move a couple of these things off my workspace so that I have room to bring in a scrap sheet of paper for the exercise.
Mandy, everything is on the supply list that we provided when they registered the class, but thank you for going over that.
Perfect. All right.
And I see that you have your little color guide as well. So once we
do.
get along the way, you can pull that closer to the screen. So
I sure will. I will pull
Thanks,
that in
Mandy.
after we do the pencil stroke exercises. Okay, so I don't want to assume that all of you have used colored pencils before, so I thought it would be prudent to just go over a couple of strokes you'll be using for the eucalyptus leaves. The first one is called a back and forth stroke, and it's exactly what it sounds. You'll place your pencil on your paper and just move it up and down without picking up your pencil. It's probably the stroke you instinctively used as a child when you were coloring, or if you enjoy adult coloring books and coloring pages, it's probably the stroke that you use. So what I showed you here is the stroke magnified or enlarged, but try to keep your strokes close together like this, where they're so close together, you cannot tell where the upstroke is from the downstroke. And let me talk about pressure for a second. The pressure that I'm using is very even, and I'm using handwriting pressure. So I'm using the same pressure that I would use if I were signing my name or just writing. So as you perform the back and forth stroke, go up and down with your strokes close together and your pressure being that of your handwriting pressure. Now, we all have different handwriting pressures. Some of you might be more heavy-handed than others. So you can adjust your pressure if your eucalyptus branch looks darker than you would like, more saturated than you would like, then you might want to ease up on your pressure when you do the project again. Conversely, if your eucalyptus leaves are too light in color saturation, then you might be a light-handed person and you need to increase your pressure just a bit. But in the general rule of thumb is just to use your normal handwriting pressure, keeping your strokes close together when performing the back and forth stroke. And I will tell you in just a second where we're going to use this stroke, but I'm going to show you just one more stroke real quick, and that is the scumbling stroke. The scumbling stroke is likely the stroke you would use as a child drawing curly hair on a person. So enlarged or magnified, it looks like a series of overlapping coils, squiggles, and circles. But zoomed in, close up, it looks like this. If you're keeping your strokes nice and close together, it's hard to even tell. I really can't tell that it's a series of overlapping coils, squiggles, and circles. And I'm still using that handwriting pressure. Now, if we were using dry colored pencils, I would likely ask you to use this stroke because it hits the tooth of the paper from every direction. Vertical, horizontal, diagonally, every single direction, whereas this one is just hitting the tooth of the paper up and down. But the nice thing about watercolor pencils is that we will be dissolving all of the pigment at the end with a wet brush and dissolving all of our pencil strokes. So the stroke you use is not as important with watercolor pencils as it is to keep your strokes close together and to maintain even pressure. So where we will be using both of these strokes, I'll just draw a little leaf here. I want you to use whichever stroke is most comfortable for you and makes it easiest for you to maintain control. For me, I like to use the scumbling stroke along the edges of the leaves because it keeps me from going outside of the lines. Sometimes if I use a back and forth stroke, I find myself going outside of the lines. So I like to use a scumbling stroke along the edges and then a back and forth stroke in the middle. Does that make sense? But you can use only the back and forth stroke. You can use only the scumbling stroke, whichever one is easiest for you, all right? So with these strokes in mind, we'll come back to this in just a little bit. We're now going to sketch the eucalyptus stem. So I am still going to use my scrap sheet of paper, and I want to explain why. All right, so some artists like to draw their actual sketch on their final working paper. Some of you may be that way. I do that when I'm painting on canvas and I'm going to cover my sketch with an opaque medium like oils or acrylics. But for colored pencil, which is a translucent medium, or for watercolor, which is transparent, a lot of times you can still see your graphite lines underneath. And while you can lift them to some degree, when I am sketching my initial sketch, I tend to make a lot of corrections and adjustments. This is actually my original sketch for the eucalyptus project that I have here. And if you look carefully, you can see some erased marks here where I decided I maybe didn't want quite that shape for the leaf. And you can still kind of see the graphite lines there. And some of these are darker because I went over it a few times to really define how I wanted the shape of that leaf to look. So if I were to use this for the final project and paint right over it, I would have a really hard time erasing these lines, and you would probably still be able to see these areas underneath. And I personally don't care for that. So what I do is I transfer my sketch to my working paper using a light box. Now I know a lot of you may not have a light box, but what you can use is a window. And how you would use a window to transfer your line drawing is to put your sketch up against the window, secure it in place with a piece of painter's tape or masking tape. And then you would take your clean sheet of final working paper, the one you want to do your project on, you would lay it over top, secure that in place as well. And then the light from the sun will shine through the window, through your sketch. You'll be able to see the sketch from your working paper. It'll shine through, and then you can lightly trace over it. And when I trace over it, I really like to use as firm as a graphite pencil as I can. A 6H is what I prefer because H stands for hard. So it's a very hard graphite pencil, so it doesn't bleed as much as a number 2 pencil, and it's less prone to smearing. And it's also a very light color. Now I am not going to use a 6H pencil today because it might make it really hard for you to see the pencil lines. So I am going to use a number 2 pencil today for that reason. But I also wanted to point out that if you draw your sketch on a separate sheet of paper and don't actually use that sketch to do your final painting or drawing, you'll always have this outline to use in the future. So let's say I just painted directly on top of this and I really messed up. Well, then I'd have to sketch it all over again. But if I have this to use to transfer, I can make as many of these as I want. So I just want to point that out just as a little tip or trick. I know some people draw directly on the paper. I just really don't like to do that. I'm still going to show you how to sketch this one longer eucalyptus stem. And then through the magic of Zoom, I'm going to swap it out for one that I have already drawn that matches up perfectly with a numbered outline I have here to make it easier for you to tell where I'm placing my color. So when I say place yellow on leaf 8, you will easily be able to find leaf 8 because they look exactly the same. Whereas when you're sketching something, it's going to look a little different each time, right? So this will just keep things consistent and make it a little bit easier for you to follow along. So with that in mind, let me show you how to sketch the eucalyptus branch. And I'm going to pull this one back over to use as my guide to help you out. Instead of just saying, okay, let's just start sketching here, follow along. What I have done is I have identified a few shapes or objects that the leaves sort of mimic and look like. Because if you were to look at a eucalyptus branch, the leaves would be facing all different directions, and each direction or place that it's facing changes the shape of the leaf, right? The leaves on a eucalyptus branch aren't like this. You know, they move and they twist, and they're all different shapes. So I've identified 5 that sort of mimic the look of the rounded eucalyptus leaves that we'll be drawing today. And one is a teardrop or raindrop shape, which is this one right here. Now this one is sort of an enlarged teardrop or raindrop, but I'm calling this one a rounded triangle. So instead of right angles for the corners, they're rounded corners. This one I've identified as a jelly bean. And I'll tell you what, when I was practicing, I kept calling it a kidney bean. And I decided that jelly bean just seems a lot better. But if I say kidney bean, you'll know what I mean, because I might misspeak and call it a kidney bean, but we'll try and call it a jelly bean. And then this shape here I see as kind of a rounded square. And this shape here is a fan, like a handheld fan or a seashell. And so every single leaf on your eucalyptus stem will have its own character and will have its own variety or curve to it, but they'll generally follow these shapes or objects. So this will help you to take this and really make it your own. And at the end of the class, you can make one exactly like this, but you can also do your own thing, your own composition, and maybe make one like this, or make one like this, or even this, or even this. So these are just a few examples of how you can make this project your own, knowing how to draw the various shapes. And then if you were to draw, let's say 3 different ones, you could hang all 3 of these in your house and create a triptych, or maybe just 2, and that would be a diptych. So really my goal for you is to learn today and just run with it and make it your own. All right, so with that in mind, the very first step to drawing the eucalyptus stem is the main branch. And this is not a straight up and down, it's a curved branch. So I'm going to place my pencil up here. I'm going to make sure my wrist is fairly loose. Even though I'm a little nervous today, I'm going to try and loosen my wrist. And then I'm just going to pull it down in a curve. And that is exactly what you're going to do on your sheet of paper, whether it's your working paper or whether it's a scrap sheet of paper, sort of like what I'm using. And I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just sort of going to work my way down. Now these are all placed very specifically. They're angled certain ways. If you're not able to squeeze all of these in, that's okay. It is still going to look like a eucalyptus branch as long as you sort of follow this guide of the various shapes and objects that I'm drawing, okay? So I'm gonna start with leaf 2 actually, which is one of these teardrop or raindrop shapes. And I sort of already have one side of this leaf done because of the stem. So I'm gonna sort of follow it up with my pencil, curve it around, and then back down to the stem. And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here to leaf 1, just going on the opposite direction. And the 2 together kind of make a heart. And that was not intentional on my part, but it sort of worked out that way. And then after these heart-shaped leaves, I see one of those rounded triangles where it's almost like a circle at the bottom and then kind of does a curved point at the top. And I do want to say there's different varieties of eucalyptus branches. There's some that are the longer, more pointed leaves. But my inspiration for this particular eucalyptus stem are the stems that have the rounded leaves. So one thing you can do just to help with consistency or realism is to make sure all the points of your leaves are rounded versus straight angles. Because I don't know of any eucalyptus plants that have both straight angles and curved leaves. I believe it's either one or the other, just so for consistency's sake, just to try to round all of those corners. So I'm gonna start at the bottom, draw my little circle here, and then kind of go up. And I saw a comment that said this one kind of looks like a pear, and I don't disagree with that comment. That is very astute. All right, so this particular leaf here is in front of the branch. So I am going to erase the branch that's running through it since this leaf is in front of it. And now I have another little raindrop leaf with a little stem. So I'm gonna draw the little stem and then curve it back around. And then over here, I'm going to draw the leaf that's in front before I draw the leaf that is in back. First, I'll draw my little stem, and this is one of those jelly bean shapes. So I'm going to kind of do a half moon and then curve it around and back under and around. If you want, one drawing tip is to always start with the basic shape that you see. This, to me, the basic shape would be a large oval. So you could draw a large oval and then curve it up and down. You could do that as well if that would help you. All right, so now I'll draw the curved triangle. I'll start with the top here. And I'll sort of visualize down and then back around. And I'll connect that to the stem. And now I'll draw leaf 7. And I'm trying not to twist my work. I like to twist my work. I'm trying not to do that today so you can follow along. So it's making a little bit harder for me to sketch beyond what I normally do. But this is one of those curved squares. And then we have another one of those here. A little heart-shaped curve at the base. This is another one that's in front of the stem. So I'm going to erase the stem running through it. And there's a little jelly bean behind it. So I'm going to draw that in. And I don't like how that curve is. So I'm going to make one of those adjustments I told you I like to make when I'm doing my sketch. Now we have a really small little jelly bean here that looks like it came out of the machine wrong. Erase that stem. Another curved triangle, or as one of our participants said, looks more like a pear. Curve that around. And it's okay if yours don't look exactly like mine. Each one is supposed to have its own character and shape. We have our first little seashell or fan. So I'm going to start with the bottom and do a little curve. Oops, I probably didn't put that down far enough. Do a little curve and then up and around and fan it over like that. And erase the stem. These are the easy ones, the 2 teardrops on each side. Okay. Now here's one that is slightly tucked behind leaf 13. So I'm going to start here where they meet and curve it around and then around that way. And do the same thing on this side, working from a weird angle so that I don't twist my paper for you guys. Ooh, made it. All right. And now a little, I almost said kidney bean, a jelly bean. Y'all are going to have chili for dinner tonight. I just know it. And this particular leaf is behind the stem. So I'm going to leave the stem there. And then we have another jelly bean going in a slightly different direction, with it being in front of the stem. So I'm going to erase the stem. Okay, we are getting there. If you need to add more length to your stem, please do that. I'm considering this like a fan shape or a seashell seashells by the seashore. So I'm gonna just kind of draw what I see, curve it around as best I can, erase the stem. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to space this one right under. That's okay. And then just 2 more jelly beans. With the stems being erased because these leaves are in front of the stem. But again, however you do it is fine because it's still going to look like a eucalyptus stem and it's going to be yours. All right.
Hey,
so
Mandy.
yes.
Quick question for you. Could you just put your picture closer to the screen so people can take a look at it? Just
This one or this one? The numbered?
Yeah, let's look at the numbered one. Let's at both so people can take a closer look.
Is that good?
It looks good. Yeah. And then the other one, just so you can do the comparison. So then which one will you be drawing on? That one.
I am going to be drawing on this one.
Okay. All right.
I'll look at this
So
one a
people can
little bit closer.
There you go.
But again, the goal here would just be to try and have a nice variety of these objects or shapes, even if they're not exactly where mine are. These varieties or shapes. In just a minute, I'm going to show you some color mixing strategies. That's what the color chart is for. So that even if the written project is very much written like a paint by number or even crochet and knit directions where it's just very specific. So you won't have to guess where I want you to place what color. But at the same time, at the end of this hour together, you'll have the tools you need to make this on your own, in your own way, however you want to, how to layer the colors and things like that. So with that in mind, we are now ready to start working on the actual project. Well, actually first what I want to do is I want to bring back in this color chart. And we're not going to take time to create the entire color chart. The project directions tell you what colors to layer to create different colors, different color combinations. But I would like to at least create 2 of them because it'll help us practice one of our strokes and practice keeping our strokes close together and using our handwriting pressure. And it will also give us just a little bit of practice activating the dry pigment and turning it to watercolor paint with a wet brush, okay? So I'm going to, with you, make color swatches of a lighter value and a color swatch of a darker value. And I selfishly chose these because they're my favorite hues in this whole project. I really like this chartreuse color. It's a tongue twister too, just like seashell. And this really pretty bluish green color. I just think they're really pretty. So it'll give you practice with a lighter value and a darker value. And part of the reason why I say that is it's really easy to dissolve the pigment in the lighter values, but darker colors usually have a lot more pigment in them. I mean, think of if you were to make red frosting or black frosting, how much food dye you would need to make the frosting look black or look red. So it's kind of the same thing with art, how the darker colors have more pigment. So it might take a few more strokes with your wet brush to dissolve the pigment all the way. So this will just give us some introductory practice. So because I am not doing the second stem with you today, I'm not doing this smaller one, I am just going to do the color chart here. But if you plan on using this final working paper for the other stem, if you don't plan on redoing it again after this class is done, you may want to do the color chart on the same page that you did your strokes on, or just another scrap sheet of paper, or just watch. All right, so for this first color swatch, we're going to use grass and yellow. So go ahead and grab those 2 colors, grass and yellow. Grass is the lighter of the 2 greens that we'll be using today, but these are the 2 colors, grass and yellow. And the swatch size is going to be about 1.5 inches in size. And I'm just going to do it up here at the top, and I'm going to use that back and forth stroke we talked about toward the beginning, and I'm going to use normal handwriting pressure. All right, so I'm just going to start here. I'm going to not go over each area more than once. I'm just going to apply color 1 time in a back and forth even manner, about 1.5 inches in size. And I'll bring that up closer so you can see. And then when you are done adding a layer of yellow, you will then go over yellow with a layer of grass in the exact same manner. So I'm going to still use handwriting pressure and a back and forth stroke and just do an even layer of grass over the yellow. So it looks like this. Now, the reason why colored pencils are considered a translucent medium is it kind of has a sandwich effect, where you can see the original color that you drew and the new color. And as you build up layers with regular colored pencils, the pigment will eventually push and burnish and blend together to create a new color. And with watercolor pencils, we kind of turn a translucent medium, well, we do, into a transparent medium when we add water over the dry pigment. So I'm just going to label this as G plus Y for grass plus yellow. And then the other swatch we're going to draw, even though this is not the entire swatch, again, we're just doing 2, is going to use lush green and midnight blue. So lush green is the darker of your 2 greens. Midnight blue may look black to you in the package, so make sure you read the words on the pencil casing to make sure you have midnight blue. And we're going to do the exact same thing with these 2 colors. We're going to do a layer of lush green and then go over that with the layer of midnight blue, directly beneath the grass and yellow one we just did. So I'm going to use my handwriting pressure, my even back and forth stroke, and then I will go over that with a layer of midnight blue. With this color chart, while you guys are doing that, I'll just share something real quick. This color chart is also sort of a value study or a value scale where it goes from lightest value to darkest value. And what I mean by value is the intensity of a color, the brightness of it or the darkness of it. So if you were to take this and look at it in black and white, this would be a very, very light gray down to a very dark gray. So it's sort of a value scale. And you can, just like with watercolor cakes or tubes, you can create values with your colors based on the amount of water that you mix with your pigment. With colored pencils, you can do that either with your pressure or with a number of layers. So you don't need to do this, I'll just show you. So I'll use really light pressure, less than handwriting pressure for this. I'll use handwriting pressure for this, and I'll use heavier than handwriting pressure for this. You can also accomplish the same thing by applying layers. So I'm able to get the same darkness by applying 3 light layers. I'm able to get the same darkness by applying 3 to 4 light layers. Okay, so either based on your pressure or based on the number of layers. When I blend this out with a wet brush, you'll see a value scale where it's a light blue, a middle valued blue, a dark valued blue. So I just wanted to say that. But in this particular project, our value scale is done by how we mix the colors versus by our pressure or the number of layers. Okay, so that's the difference. So now, I need to label this lush green midnight blue. We're now
Andy, those are some great tips. Thanks for explaining that, because that's
sure.
really, that's just part of it. But everyone seems to be following along. We just posted the colors again for you.
Great.
And just so you know, everything is being recorded. It'll be available at michaels.com/classes in 24 hours. So if you could refer back to it, and we will continue on. And then we will also, if you need anything else, we're going to just include it in the chat, but the colors are in the chat as well.
All right, and I'll also just put little dots of needed eraser between each color swatch that we're mixing out right here. So you can easily see the colors, hopefully, and the name. All right, so now grab your little saucer or cup of water and the number 4 round brush. And I am using the Winsor and Newton Cotman brushes, but again, you can use whatever you have. And what I like to do first is dip my brush into the water and just sort of move the bristles around for a few seconds to help the bristles absorb the water. And what I do to ensure that my brush does not have too much water on it is I wipe it along the rim of the saucer once on one side, I flip it, and I wipe it once on the other side. And that ensures there's not too much water on my brush. And then using that back and forth stroke, I'm only going to activate the dry pigment on half of the swatch. I will do the right half. That way you can see on the left half what it looks like dry, and you can see on the right half what it looks like wet. So I'm gonna just go back and forth only as long as it takes to dissolve the dry pigment. And with the lighter colors, it does not take much. And I'll get that a little bit closer because I know it's hard to see. Now to clean my brush, I swoosh it in the water for a few seconds, and look how clear this water still looks. You know how I was saying at the beginning that you don't really need a whole lot of water for watercolor pencils? The reason why is, unlike with watercolor cakes and tubes, we're not mixing our color palette on an actual palette. We're mixing our colors on the paper based on where we apply them and how we layer them. So the water does not get nearly as dirty. I think there's a lot less waste with watercolor pencils because what you apply is absorbed by the paper when you activate the dry pigment with a wet brush. So I love that about watercolor pencils, and you just have more control as well. I don't know if any of you have used watercolor cakes before and you've tried to achieve that loose flowy look, and then the water seems to take on a mind of its own and it does its thing and you hate how it looks. Well, I feel like with watercolor pencils you have more control because based on where you place your dry color, you're telling the water what you want it to do and how you want it to blend. All right, so sorry for that little spiel there. So I just switched my water for a few seconds. I'm gonna wipe it once on one side, flip it, wipe it once on the other side, and now I'm gonna blend out the other color swatch. Again, using a back and forth stroke, only long enough to actually dissolve the pigment, and then I'm done. And I'm gonna let the water absorb or I'm sorry, I'm gonna let the paper absorb the water and absorb the pigment. Now, I'll just show you real quick the value thing I was talking about a second ago, where based on either your pressure or your layers, that will also determine the value of your color. But look how beautifully this blends out. It's so pretty. Okay,
Mandy,
so
question for you.
yes.
It's lovely how they're coming to life. So people, there's a couple questions, because as you bring it up close, you can see how some of the lines dissolved more or less into the paper. So if they're still seeing their lines, I would suggest they just use more water. What would you, in terms of?
I wouldn't necessarily start with more water. If you're going back and forth with your brush and it's not dissolving, then I might consider adding more water, but I would just keep sweeping it over. Like this one is so dark, I'm just gonna keep going over it. I might have to go over this one 6 times, whereas this one I might only have to go over 4 times. So you'll just go over it until your pencil lines are dissolved and then stop. And that will help you from not overworking your leaves, which you'll see in just a minute because we're about ready to start the actual eucalyptus project. All right. So like I said, while we're not doing the whole color chart today, when the written directions are available on Michael's website, it will tell you what colors to mix together to make a color chart, or you can do that on your own when you rewatch this video by pausing and just viewing this sheet here. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do to the eucalyptus project or stem is use this masking fluid. How many of you have used masking fluid before? I don't know if this is new for some of you or if this is an old trick that you've used before. But what masking fluid does, it has a consistency similar to rubber cement and it peels off the same. And masking fluid, what it does is it protects the paper wherever you apply it. So we're going to apply like just a thin line of masking fluid on some of the leaves to serve as the middle vein on that leaf. And when the masking fluid dries, it will completely protect that area from receiving any pigment or water. So at the very end, when we're all done, we can wipe that masking fluid away and it will just leave a line of white that's from the paper. All right, so how I like to use masking fluid is I give it a few shakes, open it up, and I like to pour a little bit of it into the cap and work from it that way. You do have to be careful. I have accidentally knocked it over before and made a huge mess. So hopefully I will not do that live on camera today because that would be super embarrassing. All right, so you take your toothpick. We'll use this to deposit or apply the masking fluid. And masking fluid is pretty thin. So I like to dip my toothpick in the masking fluid just for a few seconds to just sort of build up a base layer. And then there's specific leaves we're going to apply the masking fluid to. We're going to apply them to the flat leaves that we can see face on. So that would be leaf 3, 7, 8, 10, 14, 16, and 20. Basically all the leaves that are the rounded triangle and the rounded square. So how we're going to apply the masking fluid is I'm going to take my wet toothpick. I'm going to place it at the middle bottom of the leaves where we're going to apply it. And I'm just going to pull up and then lift. And that is going to be really hard to see because masking fluid is very light, but I'll see if I can't get this to focus. It is not wanting to focus. Hopefully you can see that enough. I think you'll be able to see it as I apply it to more leaves. So now I'm going to apply it to leaf 7, 8. You can curve a few of them if you want. 10. And this step is totally optional. If you don't care about having a middle vein on your whole eucalyptus leaves, you don't have to do this step. I just think it adds a little interest to the final botanical. 14, 16, 20. And I'll see if I can hold that up again. Maybe it'll focus better this time. There we go. Can you see that a little bit better now? Masking fluid dries very quickly. Maybe if you don't like how you apply it, if you accidentally put like a glob of it on, all you have to do is wait for it to dry and then you can easily peel it away. I don't like to use my fingers to rub masking fluid away because I could have oil or dirt on my fingers that could muddy up the paper. What I use is a paper towel and I'll wad it up and I'll just sort of rub at it and that will lift it and then I can just wipe it off the paper. All right, so while the masking fluid dries, although it's probably almost dry by this point because it dries so fast, we are going to apply color to the eucalyptus stem. So the color we are using for that is our umber pencil. And I like to start with a sharp point on all my pencils. And here's a tip for you. If you rotate your pencil every few strokes, it will help you maintain a sharp, even point. Because what you don't want is your stem to start off real skinny and then to get real thick in the middle and then maybe skinny at the bottom. And that can happen if you're not rotating your pencil, if you're just drawing from the same side of the pencil. So if you rotate it every few strokes, it can help you maintain a sharp, even point. So I will demonstrate that for you.
Mandy, you're giving some really great tips. Thanks for all that. I know some people are asking about the masking fluid. And, you know, if they don't have it or they forget to do it, can you just circle back to that later on, you know, on a tree to give them some kind of effect? They could always leave the leaves solid as well, right?
Yes, you could always leave the leaves solid. And I will say, like with watercolor cakes or tubes, a lot of times as I do the loose flowy technique with that, I'll just avoid intentionally areas of paper. But with watercolor pencils, it's a little harder to do that. So I do use the masking fluid with the pencils, but not as much as with the watercolor cakes or tubes. All right, so hopefully if you are trying to do this along with me, you're remembering to rotate your pencil every few strokes. I'm not really going over each section more than once because I want to make sure this branch stays consistent in its amount of color and in its thickness. And I'm smearing my watercolor paint over here, but that's all right. Almost done. All right, so I have applied umber to my stem. And we are actually going to go ahead and activate the dry umber pigment and turn it into watercolor paint because umber is the only color we're applying to the stem. We're not applying any other colors, unlike with the leaves where the leaves will have various combinations of color. One leaf may have ice gray and grass plus grass and lush green. You know, it'll have a variety of different colors to kind of create all the color variances on the petals themselves. But for the stem, it's only umber. So we're going to pull our water back down. I'm going to use my number 0 Cotman brush. The reason why I'm using 0 is it's a very fine, thin brush. So it's the right width or diameter for this thin, skinny stem. And when I use it, I'm not going to place the brush on the paper like this and pull. You see how that fans out? That would make the stem too thick. So I'm not holding it straight up and down either. I'm just holding it at a slight angle, and I'm just going to use the very tip of the brush with very light pressure as I pull it along the stem. And now here's the cool thing. Watercolor pencils, you know, as I've said, can be used wet or dry. If you do not feel comfortable using a thin, skinny brush like this, you can leave the stem dry. There is nothing wrong with that. I know of a watercolor artist, well, I guess she's technically a watercolor artist because she's using watercolor pencils, but she doesn't wet them. She just uses them like dried color pencils. So you can use them wet, and some artists will use them wet and dry. It's really up to you. I'm just showing you one technique today with them. So I put my 0 brush in the water. I let the bristles absorb the water for a couple seconds. Wipe on one side, wipe on the other, just like I did with the color swatches. And I am only going over each part of the stem one time. And that is important because if I go over each section more than once, I could cause the stem to bleed out a little and appear thicker in that section than in other sections. And I know that the paper will absorb the water as it sort of softens and dissolves the pigment. So there's really no need to go over the stem more than once. It's just to sort of soften it and give it more of a watercolor appearance. So just use as much control as you can. I do add water every few seconds. Each time I wipe it along the rim, once on one side, once on the other. If you find that the brush isn't doing anything to the stem, then it might be time to add more water. But really the important thing is to try not to go over each part more than once when it comes to the stem, just so that we can try and keep it even in its thickness. And then while the stem is drying, we are going to start adding color to these beautiful eucalyptus leaves. And I think you guys will be amazed because the end result just looks like a watercolor painting, but the majority of this project is using the pencils dry. How many of you have used watercolor pencils before? Jeannie, can you let me know the answer to that on the chat? I'd be curious to know if any of you have used them before.
We're getting some favorable mixed responses.
Okay.
More have than have not.
Okay.
I see that we're getting a little close towards the end of the session, but we will run over for those of you that can stay on. So we're going to just kind of keep going into the leaves so everybody can get a feel for that.
Oh boy, the time went fast. Okay, well then let's not waste any more time. Let's apply color to these leaves. The first color I'm going to use is ice gray, and we're going to basically work from light to dark as we apply colors to these leaves, light color to dark color. So each leaf will receive a base layer of color. Some are going to receive a base layer of ice gray. Some are going to receive a base layer of yellow, and others will receive a base layer of lush green. So you can keep those three colors handy, and I will guide you on which leaves are going to receive which color. All right, so we're going to apply ice gray using either that back and forth or scumbling stroke using handwriting pressure to leaves 1, 2, and 3. So you can either watch or try and do this along with me, and it doesn't take long to fill in these leaves. Just try to be as precise as you can. Now, leaf 3 has the masking fluid. I'm going to be very careful not to go over the masking fluid with my pencil because I would like it to stay in place and I don't want to accidentally lift it. So work up to and around the masking fluid, but not over it. We'll also apply ice gray to leaves 6, 7, and 8. Remember, the stroke isn't as important as it is just to keep your strokes close together and to use consistent, even pressure. And then here's 8. And then we're going to apply it to 10, 12, and 16. So it kind of makes a diagonal line there. And then the last one for ice gray is leaf 18, which is this bottom of the 2 jelly beans.
And as you're painting along, a couple of people are asking about the watercolor pencils. And I know that there's some people that sketch as you've done before your class, and watercolor pencils would be a great solution to use when you're sketching as well, and also for fine detail after you're done with your artwork as well.
Yes, that is very true. Thank you for that. Okay, so now I'm going to use yellow. We're only applying yellow to 3 leaves because yellow is one of those colors that's going to add a pop of interest and wow to the eucalyptus branch, but we don't want it to be overwhelming. I didn't mention this, but I'll say it real quick. To keep your eucalyptus stem from looking either over or underexposed, you'll want the majority of your leaves to sort of be in the middle value range, with a few leaves being the lighter values and a few leaves being the darker value. But keeping them mostly in the middle value range will help to keep the saturation point spot on. All right, so with yellow, we're going to apply it to 13, which is this little teardrop down here, to 17, which is the upper jelly bean, and to leaf 21, which is another jelly bean shape. All right, and that's it for yellow for now. Lush green. Even with these pencils, I'm rotating my pencil every few strokes to kind of help maintain an even point. And lush green, to make it easy, is just going to be applied to all the remaining leaves that don't yet have color on them.
Mandy, what leaves got the gray color? Because we're getting a couple questions on that.
Sure, gray is 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 16, and 18.
Great, thank you.
And like I said earlier, whenever the written project is available on Michael's website, these directions will be written out and very detailed. It'll tell you not only what leaf, but where on which leaf. You know,
that is very true. So the Michael's website will have, on the project site, will have the details. This will be recorded in its entirety and available in 24 hours at michaels.com/classes. I'm going to encourage everyone, once you get the project underway, we encourage you to share your artwork with us and post it at #MakeItWithMichaels and also #Winsor and Newton. We'd also like, and we'd love for you to engage with Mandy. So I'm going to put down her Facebook handle, which is Mandy Peltier Artist. And her website is mandypeltier.com. So I'm sure she'd like to hear from you as well. And we'd love to share your artwork, and we'd like to see how things are going.
I would love to see your eucalyptus stems as you complete them. Even if it's not this one, if you do your own composition, like I had showed earlier, with this color chart, you can really make it your own. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on because like I said earlier, I want to move at a brisk pace so that I don't keep you here all day, and you can always rewatch this and pause it as you go. But I'm introducing a new color, grass, and we're going to apply this color to the entirety of a few leaves and then only to certain parts of other leaves. So we are going to apply it entirely to leaf 1 to start with. So that means you'll apply it over the ice gray. Okay, and I'll pull the color chart over here too, because we know based on the color chart, ice gray and grass will yield this hue. We're going to apply it to the entirety of leaf 8. Leaf 13, and this is my favorite color combination. It's that chartreuse color, the yellow with the grass. It's this one that we did together. I just love that color. All right, so leaf 16 to the entirety of leaf 16, and we know that's going to create this hue here. Leaf 17, another beautiful chartreuse leaf. And then the final leaf we'll apply grass to the entire leaf is 21. Now, for the rest of our color application, we'll only be applying color to part or sections of each leaf. So try to follow along as best you can. We're going to still stick with grass for now. We're going to apply grass to only the very bottom third of leaf 2. So if we were to divide this in 3, only the bottom third. Okay, so just the very tip of it. Then we'll apply it only to the left third of leaf 6. So that's this jelly bean. So if we were to divide this into 3, only the left third. You don't have to be exact. What we're aiming for is just that each leaf has a variety of colors on it and aren't just a solid color. Okay, and now to the bottom half of leaf 3. So bottom half, if we were to kind of split this leaf in 2, just to the bottom half. And then to the left halves of leaves 7 and 10. So if you were looking at leaf 7 straight on, it's a little easier to tell this is the left half. But since I'm doing it up and down, but think of it as if you were looking at the leaves straight on. So for this leaf, leaf 10, it would be this side. The left half would be this side. All right, so that's it for grass. I'll hold this up for a second while I get my next pencil. The next pencil is Midnight Blue. I'm gonna pull it back down. Midnight Blue will be applied entirely to a few leaves. The first one is leaf 5, which is one of the overlapping leaves. We have a few overlapping leaves. In order to be consistent with light, The back leaves should be darker than the front leaves, because if light were hitting both leaves, the front leaf would receive the most light and block light from the back leaf. So in order to be consistent with how light works, the leaves that overlap the back leaf will be darker. So to leaf 5, apply midnight blue to the entirety of that leaf. So even while this isn't necessarily photorealistic, we still want to try and be real. Oh, I have black in my hand. See, I did that. You know how I said you have to be careful with midnight blue, not to grab black? I grabbed black. So this one I applied black, but that's okay. It's still going to work out. All right. So just to be consistent with the light, even though this isn't necessarily photorealistic. All right. And then midnight blue to the entirety of leaf 11, which is this little jelly bean here. To the entirety of leaf 19, which is this bottom sort of seashell shape. And again, you're just doing one quick even layer of color. With colored pencil that aren't water soluble, I have you really take your time and make sure you fill in the whole tooth of the paper. But with watercolor, we don't necessarily have to be that precise and careful, just as long as our pressure is even and our strokes are close together. All right, so that was leaf 19. We're also going to apply it to leaf 20 and 22. So to the entirety of this leaf here. And to the very bottom leaf. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves that we applied midnight blue to in its entirety. And now we're going to apply it only to part of some leaves. So to the bottom half of leaf 4, bottom half of leaf 4, and leaf 12. Now, this is going to be a little bit of an exception from what I've told you. I've been telling you to use handwriting pressure. Midnight blue is a very influential color. It's very dark, whereas ice gray is very light. So I'm going to ease up on my pressure a little and use slightly lighter than handwriting pressure so that I don't completely overwhelm that ice gray. That's only for this leaf because I'm putting midnight blue over ice gray. All right, and then I'm going to apply it to the upper half of leaf 9. So the upper half would actually be the upper part here that runs under the overlapping leaf. So I'm going to sort of wrap around, avoid the stem here, and add it there. And then to the bottom 3/4 of leaf 14 is this one. So bottom 3/4 would basically be everything but this little tip here. Again, you don't have to take your time, just keep your strokes even. And then to the left upper curve of leaf 10. Left upper curve would be just right here. Okay, and then that's it for midnight blue. We only have 3 colors to go before we're ready to activate the dry pigment with a wet brush. The next color is lush green. We've already used lush green. We used it in the first step to add it to the entirety of several leaves. We're only going to use it this time to add a little bit of color to certain leaves on certain sections. So leaf 1 to start with, leaf 1, we're only going to apply it to the bottom half. And what this does, it'll kind of separate this leaf from this leaf.
Mandy, I just want to jump in and just assure everyone that the class is going to go over until we get through this stem, and then she's going to activate it so you can see the actual color. It is getting recorded. You can continue. Don't fret over it. We will have it available, and also the project with all the details is getting uploaded. It'll be available on the Michael's project site. Yes. But we're glad for the feedback. Please do your survey after the class. So we will curate more classes for you based on your feedback. And I'll just let Mandy continue on. So we will complete the class and it'll be recorded and available at michaels.com/classes. And everything is going to be in the chat. And that's it. So just continue on.
If it helps for planning purposes, my estimate is we have about 20 more minutes, if that. Okay, so I applied lush green to the bottom curve here of leaf 3, so just along this very bottom curve. I'm going to apply it to the right half of leaf 8. So the right half would be this side here. And I'm going to do the same to leaf 16. So the right half of leaf 16. To the bottom left curve of leaf 10. That's this one. This is where we applied midnight blue. So we're basically making the left half of this leaf darker than the right half. We're pretending the sun is hitting this side of the leaf more than it's hitting this side. Okay. To the right half of leaf 17. So that means this leaf, only part of it will be that chartreuse color. Some of it will have a bit more of green to it. To the very left edge of leaf 18. So just the left edge, not even half, just the left edge. So we just want to give this leaf just a pop of color, but it's mostly going to be that ice gray. And then to the left half of leaves 7 and 21. 7 and 21. So we're going to go over the grass on leaf 7. And then we're going to go over some of the yellow and grass on leaf 21. So basically the opposite of this one. And then that's it for lush green. 2 more colors, and they're quicker. Grab your yellow again. We're just going to add a highlight of yellow to 4 leaves. We're going to add yellow to the middle top tip of leaves 7 and 16. So middle top would be like right here. That's it, just that much color. In 16, just the very top tip, just a touch of it. It's amazing how just a touch of it will really make a difference when we activate this dry pigment and turn it into watercolor. And then the very left edge of 8. So the whole left edge, I'm just going to run yellow up it, just the left edge. And then the bottom right curve of 20. So this is a darker leaf, but we're just going to add a little bit of yellow to maybe make it slightly more green because as you remember from your school days, blue and yellow make green. All right, so with that, we're done with yellow. The very last color is black, and that's what I accidentally applied on this leaf because I was not paying attention. So black is only going to be used on the leaves where they overlap. So like for this leaf here where it's 5 and 6, we're going to just put it right here and right above, just the parts where they overlap. And that will just kind of help distinguish them from each other and separate them. You'll be better able to see what I'm doing on this one, on leaves 8 and 9. I'm just going to run it right where they overlap. That's it, just where they overlap. I'll do the same thing to 13 and 14. I'll apply black just where they overlap. I'll do the same thing down here with 18 and 20, just where they overlap. Do I sound like a broken record yet? And 21 and 22. Once again, everyone say it with me, just where they overlap. All right, and then that's it for the colors. We're ready to activate the dry pigment and turn it into watercolor. So I can put my numbered outline aside because we're done applying color. Pull your water down if you have it kind of set aside and grab your number 4 brush. I use only my number 4 brush to blend the leaves. You can use a different number. You can try using the one. The one might be a little tricky because it doesn't hold as much water and it's not as thick, but if that's all you have, by all means, please give it a try. So once again, and look at the water. We've used it a couple times already and look how clean it still is. I just think that's so neat about watercolor pencils. There's just so much less waste. And you'll see what I mean, how based on where we've applied our color is basically going to tell the water what to do. Now, a quick note, as we blend these leaves, we're on every single leaf, we're going to clean our brush in between each leaf, first of all. And second, we're going to blend from the lightest color on each leaf towards the darkest color. And as soon as all the pigment is dissolved, you're going to stop and be done. All right, and let's talk about the leaves that overlap. If we were to blend both of these at the same time, the colors would run into each other and it would look like just one big blob leaf. So in order to keep that from happening, we're going to blend the darker of the leaves first, of the leaves that overlap, the darker of the leaves. And then while those are drying, we'll add water to the individual leaves. And by the time we're done with that, the dark leaves will be dry enough that we can then blend out the front leaves that overlap, okay? So I'll show you first. I'm going to wipe my brush 2 times. Now this one's not going to be the right hue because I used black. It's going to be very dark, but I'm only going to blend out the pigment of the darker of the 2 leaves, just until the pigment is dissolved. And then I'm going to swish my brush, wipe it on each side, and I'll move on to the next one. So kind of ignore that one because it is not the right color, but this one. So we have black and we have the lush green. I'm going to start with the lush green because that is the lighter of the 2 colors. So just like with the color swatch, I'm just running my brush over it until the pigment dissolves. I try to put enough water on my brush so that I don't have to re-wet it other than in between leaves. But if for some reason, like you're running your brush over it, and it's just not enough water, you don't have enough water to push around, then by all means, re-wet your brush. But I do not touch the leaves again once I'm done blending out the pigment. Once I'm done dissolving the pigment, I let the water then do what it wants and I leave it. And that kind of helps me from not overworking the leaves. I know some watercolor artists will do a light layer of color and then a light layer of color. With watercolor pencils and with my watercolor cake technique, I just sort of paint in the color, I drop it, and then I let it kind of blend and flow into each other. All right, so cleaning my brush in between each leaf. I'm going to work on this one now, these overlapping leaves. I have lush green up here, and then this is a combination of lush green and midnight blue. And this is lush green, midnight blue, and black. So I'm going to start with my lush green. Then I'm going to blend it into the lush green, midnight blue before I carry it over to the black. So I'm always dissolving my colors, dissolving the pigment, going from light to dark. And what will happen if I don't do light to dark is the leaves will look like this one. They'll just look black. If I start with the black and then work towards the lighter colors, it'll just make the leaf all dark because the dark color is so influential. All right, so now I'll blend this one as best I can, working from light to dark. And then working along the area where they overlap. And I'm working at a weird angle now. So pardon me if I lose control or go out of the lines here. All right, so it doesn't take long to blend each leaf. This is the fast part, if you can believe it. And then this bottom one here. Now for these really little leaves, I do find sometimes that instead of just wiping my brush once on each side, sometimes I need to wipe it a 3rd or 4th time because it can just be so much pigment on the brush. So you may just have to get a feel for it. But in general, I find that just wiping it twice is enough. Okay, so I have now blended all of the overlapping leaves, or the darker of the overlapping leaves. So now I'm going to take a look. I do have a couple leaves that aren't overlapping, but they're right next to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and blend out the darker of those 2. So that would be leaf 1 here. Oh, that's so pretty. I love that color combination. I'll see if I can rise it up. It's so pretty. And as it dries, it'll even take on a different shape or form. And then I have these 2 that are right next to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and blend out the darker of those 2. And it's okay if you go right over the stem. It's not going to dissolve the stem at all. But I'm still working from lightest color to darkest color. And then as soon as the pigment's dissolved, I don't touch it anymore. I leave it. All right, so now I am free to activate the dry pigment in all of the single leaves. I'm still going to leave the overlapping leaves alone to give the darker leaves a little more time to dry. The same with leaf 2. I'm going to give this a little bit more time to dry, and I'm going to give this leaf a little more time to dry. So I'm just going to work from top to bottom. Same manner where I am blending from lightest color to darkest color. Do add more color on your brush if you find that it's not doing anything. Like this one here, I need to add a little more color because it's just a little too dry on there. And then once the pigment is dissolved, leave it alone and move on to the next one. I kind of think watercolor pencils combine the best of both worlds. You get the therapeutic nature of colored pencils and their precision, but you still get the beautiful, flowy, transparent look of watercolor. There's something about drawing that's just really relaxing, especially with colored pencil. And, you know, I might be partial since I'm a colored pencil artist, but I really like the combination of the two. It's really nice. So I'm not doing anything different here. I'm just working from leaf to leaf, dissolving the dry pigment, working from light to dark. Only adding more water on my brush if I need to. But then when I move on from one leaf to the next, I'm done. I don't generally go back and make any other adjustments. And that it will help it have that loose, flowy look. Now this leaf is really fun here. It's the only leaf with this color combination where it's the ice gray and the midnight blue. So it just adds a really nice kind of pop of color to the branch. That's just really nice. I do want to tell you all too that on my website, mandypeltier.com, I do have a free tutorial that's available. This is watercolor peaches, but they're done with watercolor pencils. And there's also an accompanying YouTube video where I demo how I make it and I explain how I make it. You can download the PDF of that tutorial from my website if you go to mandypeltier.com. And there's also a link to the accompanying YouTube video, should you be interested to explore watercolor pencils a bit more.
And we're getting great reviews and wonderful feedback. And I'm going to encourage everyone to complete your survey. We are getting close. It's coming to life. It looks lovely.
Yes.
And it's been really relaxing to watch you do it. And Mandy's going to be joining us again on October 6th. And she will share with you, she's got another interesting project. So stay tuned. Michaels will be posting these projects on their website as well. So you'll have that as backup. And as I said earlier, the hashtag Make It With Michaels, hashtag Winsor and Newton. It would be wonderful to see your final creations.
Yes.
And let's let Mandy finish up and then we'll have her close. And thank you all for joining. Like I said, recorded. You can look at it at your leisure in 24 hours. And it's been a great joy to bring Mandy to you. We're happy with this. Looks lovely.
No, this has been so much fun.
Class.
So I'm done blending out. Oh, I did miss one. Let me just get that one real quick. But I have another one that I've already done. So I can show you what happens when it's dry and how you remove that masking fluid and even how you can remove some of the graphite lines. So I'll show you that real quick. This is the project I'm going to be doing 3 Michaels 2 weeks from today on October 6th at the same time. They're wooden coasters using the Winsor & Newton colored pencil line. So the colored pencils, not the watercolor pencils. So I'd love to have you back for that if you're interested in learning about colored pencils. But here's the one that I completed before class. So it's already dry. And it's ready for me to remove the masking fluid. So I have my paper towel here, and literally all you do is you just rub at it and it will lift that masking fluid and reveal the white of the paper underneath. And then you can just wipe it off. So you can see how it just adds a little bit of interest to your eucalyptus leaf. Totally optional. Not required. And then I just use an eraser and I just gently go over any graphite lines that are still visible. If you use the 6H pencil I was talking about earlier, that is really light in color, you won't have to erase nearly as much and it'll still be easy to lift. Number 2 might be a little bit harder. So when you transfer your outline or when you sketch your outline, just try to use as light of pressure as possible. That'll make it a little bit easier to erase.
And great tips. We actually have someone suggested as well, if you are using the masking fluid, make sure it dries rather quickly, but any of this should be done when it's completely dry.
Yes, that is an excellent tip. I would wait, honestly, I would wait 2 hours. And I don't think it'll take nearly 2 hours for it to dry. But if you just set in your mind, I'm not going to touch it for 2 hours, it'll give the paper time to absorb all of the wet pigment and do what it does and have those colors kind of flow and bleed into each other. It'll be fully dry and ready for you to lift the masking fluid using the paper towel method. And again, I wouldn't use your fingers just because there could be some oil or dirt, and I'd hate for it to look perfect and then you smear dirt on it or something like that. So paper towel are pretty easy to come by, or even just a regular towel you can use to just sort of wipe it away. But I'm finished, and I am so glad that you all were here today. I'm going to switch to my other camera just so you can see my face real quick. And I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something, and I loved being with all of you today. This was really a delight. So I hope I will see you all again soon. And again, please find me on Facebook, like my Facebook artist page, Mandy Peltier Artist. You can contact me through my website as well, mandypeltier.com. And yeah, just thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.